I'm a little parched. Let's drink to that. Welcome, sluts, and welcome to book wrap up for February. I haven't read that much this month, to be honest. Maybe a little bit on the slow side for books and whatnot, but hey, that happens to the best of us. Back off. I've got I finished 3 books this month, which admittedly is kind of low, but I've been a busy boy, been a busy guy. And kind of looking at the size of these books, it's not too bad, to be honest. It's not too bad. First book, For Their Hanged, Joe Abercrombie. What can I say? This was a great book. I think a lot of people are gonna like this a bit more than book 1. For me personally, and this is even kind of going to book 3 stuff, but I think book 1 is the strongest for me, but I also think that's because my favorite character in the entire trilogy is Jezal, or Jezal. And I just think his character in book 1 is so much more striking than it is in books 2 and 3. I actually think for a lot of people, his character is going to improve over books 2 and 3. I don't think that it gets like worse. But I'm just kind of saying for myself, that wasn't really like the character that I kind of fell in love with or really enjoyed reading. So I actually preferred the book 1 Jezal, which is what a lot of people don't like. But he goes through some changes, and he keeps a lot of the same habits. Don't get me wrong. It's not like he just completely morphs into somebody else or whatever, but I feel like Jezal goes through a lot of change and a lot of development throughout the series. And he's kind of like my sleeper OP character, not in terms of like he's strong in world or anything, but just like a great character to follow. And I think this book is amazing for his character. And I think if you enjoy the direction that his character is going to take in this book, you're going to absolutely love it. I was a bit more, I could take it or leave it kind of thing. I'd loved seeing him continue to be a major part of the series. And I enjoyed his character before this, and I enjoyed this character. I enjoyed all the changes that were made to his character. It was nice to see him developing in some fashion, even if for myself it was, I don't know what I really wanted from Jezal. Thinking about it, I think the way that Joe Abercrombie handled him throughout the entire series was really great. But yeah, this is where Jezal kind of picks up for a lot of people, and I really love to see that. I think he's a great character, and I think the stuff that's included in here is great. I just personally am a bit more of a book 1 Jezal fan, and then books 2 and 3. He's my favorite character, no doubt about it, but I think some of the other characters, especially Glokta, start to really catch up. I thought the adventure in this book was great. I just think everything about this book was great. I think Glokta is an amazing character. I actually really grew to really quite like Pharaoh in this book, and I grew to respect what's his name, Logan, in this book a bit more. I would say Logan was probably my least favorite, and still definitely is my least favorite of the main 3. The characters which are like noted on the back of the series or whatever. But I definitely think Logan grew on me a lot in this book, and I definitely don't think he was pushing to be my favorite. That's kind of by a long shot, but I think that speaks more volumes as to how much I was enjoying Jezal and Sandan Glokta as just compared to Logan. I really enjoyed I actually quite enjoyed the West and Dogman stuff in here. I think West and Dogman for me, I'll just take it as like the whole, well, no, that's different. But West and Dogman for me, especially during this book, they didn't really grab me in the same way that Giselle and Sadan Glokta did, and Pharaoh a little bit as well. They just weren't as incredible characters, but I did still really enjoy following them. So it was a bit of I really liked the plot line that was going on with them. I really liked all three major plot lines that we have kind of running through this novel. We've got the Glokta storyline, we've got the adventure storyline, and then we've kind of got the war storyline. And they were all really great. They were all amazing. I really enjoyed them. I think the ending of this book is absolutely perfect. I wouldn't change it. I absolutely love it. I think I also really ended up liking the Malachus Kwai stuff in this book and book 3. I wish he did get a bit more time. I think he kind of gets a little bit quiet and kind of steps back a little bit in books 2 and 3. In book 1, he's kind of an introductory figure in the story, so it does make sense that he's not really that prominent, but I did kind of wish we got a bit more of him in books 2 and 3, although I did like what we did get in book 2 especially. I just thought he was an interesting character. I really like how Joe Abercrombie just absolutely commits to his characters. If his character thinks one thing, he's gonna go with it. He's gonna go for it. And I like that he doesn't just flip characters on their heads. Characters don't just become good all of a sudden. Characters don't just become bad all of a sudden. You know, there's so much depth to these characters, and what he starts with is what he ends with. He's very like, these are real. These characters are real. They aren't just going to have a miraculous growth over the course of 1 year. Although characters are going to grow and change, but it's not going to be miraculous. If they do change, it's going to be through hard work, through tough lessons, and through really emotional journeys. It's not just something that kind of snaps into happening, which I feel like you often do see in a lot of other fiction books, I suppose, because, you know, we need character arcs. They're kind of what drives the world. But how quickly can we create these character arcs? And I think Joe Abercrombie really highlights the fact that you can do it really slowly, and you can almost not do it at all, and you can just create amazing characters whose arc is almost being devoid of an arc. It's a strange way that I feel about it, but this book is great. I think it's very middle book syndrome, so if that's not really your thing, maybe you might not like this, but I don't really see that being too big of an issue for a lot of people. I feel like this book kind of starts to get the wheels on the road, if that makes sense, for the major plotline of the trilogy. But then again, there really isn't a major plotline of the trilogy. I know what it would be after finishing the third book if I had to say what the major plotline of the trilogy was, but I really don't feel like you feel that. I feel like you're more just living with these characters, experiencing these events as they go through. And I may as well just start holding up book 3, because I'm going to try and transition into book 3, even though the entire trilogy just feels like one book in my mind, which is a really good thing, honestly. It makes it feel really cohesive and great, which maybe won't apply to everything in today's video. But Last Argument of Kings, this book was off the fucking rails at times. I think definitely it had a bit of a similar, like, this series is quite slow paced throughout all of it. It definitely is. There are times where the pace picks up. There are times when it really doesn't. I think overall the series is kind of slow paced for a number of reasons, but I think the main reasons is that it's character focus, yada yada. But I think this book just did so well. It's a bit bigger than the other two. but it just handles everything that's been set up really, really well. And these pages really deliver on everything that you would want them to. Besides, like, major plot points. I think the one thing that Joe Abercrombie did, and I really respect him as an author for doing this, is being like, hey, I'm not creating this huge, intricate, interweaving, really complicated plot. It's a bit of a simple. But okay, I take that back. It's not even a simple plot. Kind of what he's done is say, like, I'm not really going to have that much of plot. Instead of me going, hey, I'm either going to pick a simple or a really complicated plot, he's kind of like, well, there'll be a sort of plot in the middle of it, but it's nothing crazy. It's not like Prophecy or Destiny or any of these things that tend to kind of run down the center of something like a Lord of the Rings, Deliver the Ring, or trying to think of something, maybe like Dune, Fulfill the Prophecy type of thing. There's none of these like major, huge central narratives that we have to kind of follow and we know we will fulfill at some point. It's kind of just like, hey, here's a world, go explore it. And I really love the way that this concluded. And I also love the way it didn't feel like a conclusion at all. And that's not to say that it left me wanting, but I just think it didn't fall into that classic, okay, let's blow up half the world and kill off everybody and just kind of the world starts anew, which is what, well, okay, I shouldn't, but I just like that it kind of was like, nah, shit happened and that was that. See you in the next one. It really feels like a trilogy, but it doesn't feel like it really wraps anything up. Not in a bad way, in a really good way. It leaves things open. It doesn't feel like it has to explain itself and explain everything that happens. It's nice to read something that feels like these big events and these big characters can just exist because they should exist in this kind of world. Not everything gets a fancy bow to plop on top of it and slide towards the reader. I mean, things just kind of happen and change and morph. And I feel like this book really highlights why this series is so successful. For me personally, and I guess in a wider audience as well, that I feel like it just manages to take what you expect from fantasy or grimdark or whatever you want to call it and just kind of goes, I don't have to do that. I can just create an amazing story with amazing characters, and I don't have to explain everything. I don't have to live by these rules. Like it truly does feel like such a breath of fresh air in a genre where there really isn't much room for that kind of fresh air. It's so hard to write a fantasy that is just so classic in its tropes, in its world, in its characters. Well, maybe not the character side of things so much, but it just has all the elements of a classic, traditional, very normal fantasy story, but it's just told in such a fresh and unique way without being over the top, trying to be something fresh and unique. And I feel like that's a really good tie-in to our third book, which, let me just get started by saying, the thing I love about, what's it called? This trilogy, First Law trilogy, is that it just feels so unique. I feel like the way he crafted the story and the characters and the way he tells it, it's just like, it's nothing like you've ever really read before. This is also really unique. But this book tries so hard to have a unique spin on the classic kind of YA fantasy that I feel like Joe Abercrombie, I don't know if I want to say he barely tried, but I feel like he doesn't make it obvious if he did really try to make something unique. It just feels like it was natural, like it just came from him, and it's just what happened with his characters. It all just kind of flowed as it flowed. But I feel like this is very intentionally trying to be unique, be individual, be something different. And I feel like it works a lot of the time. I actually feel like overall the Nevernight Chronicles was good. I enjoyed reading it. I thought there was definitely some lows, but I thought there was really some highs, and I thought it was really fun. It's definitely I wouldn't really say it's YA, but it's definitely YA inspired, and that kind of YA writing, and oh, there was lightning outside. That was crazy. Like genuinely, I was like, oh, when it flashes, like I'll be like, ooh, there's lightning, but it like genuinely got me when the sound came, and so that's kind of embarrassing. I was frightened on the recording. I was gonna play it up when the sound came, but then when it happened, I was kind of stuck in this like half play it up, half actually be scared. Then I felt weird. I felt weird about it. Um, never night. Well, Dark Dawn, I should say. Genuinely a pretty good conclusion to the Nevernight Chronicle. I was actually expecting this maybe to not quite reach my not reach my expectations, but I wasn't really expecting it to be very good after book 2, because book 2 just didn't really do it for me. I think we kind of misstepped, we kind of went the wrong way, we didn't really do what I was hoping we did. But this book, I think, got it right back on the rails. It addressed what I really wanted it to address. And it was fun. It was, it was very over dramatic and over the top, but that just is Nevernight. I think it's kind of, I don't want to say it's campy, because I don't feel like that kind of describes it perfectly. But I think it's almost like it's fun over the top at times, and I think it's a little bit self-aware, and kind of that's what I mean by a little bit campy, but not that I don't know. I don't feel like that does it complete explain what I feel about it. I think it's good. I think it was a good book. I think it concluded everything fine. I have a bit of an issue with the way that like deaths, resurrections, fake outs, etc. were handled during this book. I think they were just it was too much death, too much death fake outs, too much resurrection. I think these things need to be really really careful when you're adding a ton of deaths into your books. Here we go with the rumble again. I'm ready for it this time. I promise I'm ready. But you got to be really careful when you're adding things like heaps of deaths and death fake outs into your books. Here's the rumbling. They can really take the weight off those events, right? If you have a ton of main characters dying, then when a main character dies, I don't really care about it. And I think that the book suffers a bit from that, because kind of when you get to the end, a lot of shit starts happening, and I almost just felt desensitized to it by that point. I kind of had seen everything. I was kind of expecting things to happen. It just wasn't as like shocking and frightening as I think it could have been if he kind of laid off the pedal a little bit on the lead up, and then kind of had those crescendo more at the end. But I do really respect him as an author, going for that kind of slow drip. There's going to be a lot of deaths, take it or leave it kind of thing. I just feel like personally it took away a little bit of the impact, especially on the ending of the book. I think that ending of the book could have been really strong. But I just think it was coming for too long. It wasn't very surprising. There was things that didn't make a ton of, not sense, but weren't foreshadowed well enough. And if they were, it just foreshadowed isn't the right word, but it wasn't explained well. It kind of, things got conjured towards the end of the book just for plot convenience, and these emotional jabs that I think maybe weren't earned. I sound like a hater. I enjoyed this book. It was a 4 out of 5. I really enjoyed it. Oh, I didn't rate the other ones, but 5 out of 5 for both of them. This is a good old 4 out of 5. I was thinking about giving it a 4.5, but I think just what I said before about like the death trope really kind of running itself into the ground. And I also just think like a general, the magic wasn't as interesting as I think it could have been. It all was just kind of convenient. I think if you read into a lot of the scenes, which I really wasn't trying to do, I was trying to just kind of go with all the shit that was happening. You can pick up on a lot of, I don't want to say magical plot holes because that doesn't really make any sense, but inconsistencies with the magic system. And just it doesn't really fit a lot of the time. It just kind of happens to be conveniently what they need. Especially towards the end of this book, things get like the magic system really starts to ramp up. And I think it's almost like I wish I was told a bit more, or I wish this was a bit better structured. So when magic does start to go bonkers, I at least kind of know what I'm looking at. But yeah, it's fine. It was really good besides that, right? Like I had a lot of fun with this series, and I actually think a little bit it's better than I was probably expecting. I was going to this to be a little bit of a hater, and I didn't really like book 3 as much as I had hoped. But overall I still thought book 3, I had a positive experience reading it. Like, I'm glad I read book 2. Did I say book 3? Book 2. I overall had a positive experience reading book 2, even though it was like very, very slightly positive. I had a lot of negative things to say about it because I just think it took the potential of book 1 and squandered it so hard. But I think book 3 brought it back, did what I had to do. That's all the books that I read in February. There's not a lot. It's a short month, I suppose, but I mean, I'm already 2 days late. I did want to talk about the book that I just started today, though. The same day that I finished Dark Dawn, which is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I just started reading this. I'm only 28 pages in, so I haven't really read too much, but yeah, I'm really enjoying it. It is a bit of a mystery novel, I suppose. It's like a literary mystery, like a college friendship literary mystery, acting, school, Shakespeare, girl. I guess it's fun so far. So the prologue of this book, you learn what the entire book is about, and basically it's someone who's been in prison for a certain amount of time for something that happened during the events of this book, and he's like, in the prologue he's like, oh, okay, I'll tell you my story, and then it goes from there. But my not really an issue, but my just major question at the moment is it really doesn't seem like it could go the way that I think it's going to go. I mean, my theory on this book is that it's about murders and people are all murdering each other, and there's a secret killer or there's some shit like that in the acting school or whatever. And I still think that's the case. Like, that's what's going to happen, but I just don't see how the friendships that were being shown in some of these early chapters is going to turn into that. I don't see that happening. I mean, they all seem pretty chill, but I suppose that's going to be like unveiled. So we'll see. I'm excited to just read this book and see what comes of it. I really like the cover. I will say that it's a really great cover. The Shakespeare, I'm kind of just glossing over. I don't really know much Shakespeare, so when they're quoting it, I'm just like, okay, I'll trust you. I'll trust you that that's a Shakespeare quote. And maybe the power of the words doesn't really hit me the same, but yeah. That's everything. I'll update you on how I feel about this over on the Goodreads when I finish it. I predict it's a 4-star. It's going to be a 4-star read. That's irrelevant to my already starting the book. I would have probably thought that anyway. I'm really hoping it's a 5-star read though. I do feel like I'll probably land in 4-star, and let's pray it's not a 2 or a 3. Grr, that would be that would be bad. I definitely think her writing is really strong. I don't think it's going to be a 1 or a 2 star, but you never know. Shit could go south. I don't know. But yeah, update on the Goodreads for this, and on the channel on the March wrap up when it happens. After this, I really want to start reading Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire. But I just don't know if I have the time. So we'll see. There is also the Dandelion Dynasty book 2 that I need to read, but I just can't be fucked reading that. I don't know. I probably will at some point, but the further I get from that series, the less I fucking think about it. I don't really care, so we'll see. I mean, I enjoyed The Grace of Kings, don't get me wrong, but yeah, the further away I get from The Grace of Kings, I just think less and less about it. I think I gave it a 3.5 star, and I just wasn't super excited to pick up the next one, but I've heard so many great things about book 2, so I'll probably do it at some point. But I'd say, I'm guessing A Game of Thrones is next up. But I could be wrong. I'm trying to think of fantasy books that I've got. I've also got Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch that I want to read. But I'm like savoring that for a rainy day because, Gentleman Bastards is so good. I could also continue Joe Abercrombie, but again, I want to save that for a rainy day. I don't want to jump straight into the next trilogy just yet. Okay, bye.